Hi, I'm Kara Stern, the host of Snack Size PD. Just like a snack helps you power through, our goal is to provide a boost of inspiration to over-Zoomed teachers and principals. The topic for today focuses on the lingering effects of the pandemic on students, especially as we return to in-person learning. And I couldn't be more excited to welcome as my guest, Dr. Michael Thompson. Can I call you Michael?
Of course you can, Kara, of course.
So Michael is a clinical psychologist, a school consultant, and an international speaker on the subject of children, schools, and parenting. He has authored 9 books on topics ranging from the emotional lives of boys to friendships and social cruelty in childhood to the tensions that arise in parent-teacher relationships. I've read many of these books and credit Best Friends, Worst Enemies with helping me land my first principal job. So Michael, welcome. Honestly, like I'm a little starry-eyed to have you here.
I didn't know I'd helped you get a job. That please.
You did, in fact. Um, all right, so as schools are returning to face-to-face and or concurrent learning, I'm hearing teachers express concern about what they'll be seeing with students in the wake of this crisis. And this is a big topic, but do you think that we can manage it in a snack size?
Yes.
All right.
Um, a lot of the concern comes from a fear that people have that the pandemic has traumatized kids and that we're going to see really psychologically injured kids. And when you read in the media that there's been an uptick in suicides during the pandemic, then there's naturally a fear, oh my goodness, this has affected the emotional well-being of children. What I want to say is that when children return to school, they are going to be incredibly relieved and very happy to be back in school. If they've been remote for months, they are just going to be so happy. A second grade teacher in Atlanta told me that a second grade girl, after returning for a long remote stint, came back in the classroom and said to her teacher, "This is the best day of my life."
Oh, wow.
And the
Oh,
teacher
wow.
thought, I'm a first responder. I'm really helping her. If she thinks coming back with masks and social distancing is the best day of her life, and she really needed this. The therapy that children need is going to be getting back to school and being with other kids. And they will be excited. There were kids who were anxious and depressed before the pandemic. There have been a few other kids where the frustration and the loss, and perhaps if they lost a family member to COVID, the the grief that they've experienced will leave them somewhat subdued. But I don't want teachers to buy into this trauma narrative that they're going to have a bunch of injured kids. The vast majority of kids are resilient. They've been in homes with the parents who love them and the parents doing the best they can to keep them safe. That's what children require. And most of the kids in independent international schools that I have talked to have had those conditions and they're okay, even though they've been bored and frustrated and
Mhm.
at times very annoyed by being stuck with their parents endlessly.
Right. Right. Somebody was speaking to me on an earlier episode about the loss of independence for high schoolers when they're able to go back to regain that independence, even if the independence was just traveling to school by themselves, that it's going to
Huge,
feel like so big.
huge.
Yeah. So, so for teachers then, as they welcome students back, what's your sense? Do they jump back into kind of business as usual? Like this is how it's always been. Let's go right back to that. Or is there some transition space? What do you think?
I would want, if kids have been away from me for a long time as their teacher, I would want to know, I would want to sit them in a circle and say, so how was the pandemic for you?
Mhm.
Because I want to know if a kid has had a loss, if it was an uncle or a grandparent. I want to know. It's been a year for
Mhm.
many. I'm working with a lot of schools in Los Angeles County, and they are just getting their students back since March of 2020. You would want, every human being is going to have a pandemic story, and you would want to let your children know that you want to hear about how the pandemic was for them.
Mhm,
And so they would hear it from each other. This isn't group therapy. This is curiosity.
mhm.
Sit them in a circle and say, what was the hardest thing about the pandemic? Was there anything you liked about it? And go around in the circle and get kids to tell their story. That's all that's needed. You may get a red flag from one kid, maybe two kids, but I think mostly they'll be very pleased to be asked to tell their
And
pandemic
would you
story.
do the same with high school?
You bet I would. You bet I would. Same for all ages. Kids all have a story to tell
Mhm,
at any age.
yeah.
They're just briefer when they're younger.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that parents are certain to be like hyper concerned during this time as their kids go back to school. So what advice would you give to teachers about managing the concerns and perhaps the like significantly increased communication demands that they're going to experience from parents?
Okay. Yeah, I just got off a call with parents in the Near East South Asia Conference of Overseas International Schools, and I've done 3 calls with them during the pandemic. At one time, I had 1,000
Wow.
parents, and they're hugely anxious.
Mhm.
Um, there have been all kinds of challenges for the parents, but the main one is that they've been vigilant and on guard in protecting their children and trying to keep anybody in the family from dying and following the rules and supervising homeschooling. And they're they're pretty chinned up, and
Mhm.
they need a break from their kids, but it's hard for them to let go of control. So I've been giving the same message to parents. You, the vast majority of kids are going to be resilient. We're not going to have a generation of traumatized kids from this. And teachers need to convey that confidence. What teachers need to let parents know was the first day back went very well. The kids were a little shy and tentative, but after a couple of hours, they were back into it because that's the story I'm hearing from teachers.
Mhm.
That's the story that parents need to hear. If parents say in a very nervous way, oh, how do I prepare my child to go back to school? The answer is you put them in the car, wish them a good day, open the door, and send them to school, right? They know how to do school. They
Yeah.
haven't forgotten that. The anxiety's on the parents' side.
Mhm.
And I'm getting all kinds of parent fears. Will my child be socially regressed? Will my child be socially anxious? Will my child be able to rejoin the group? Look, we're primates. Our whole neurobiology is geared to living in groups with others. Kids want to see other kids and they want to play. That's Play is the signature mammalian behavior, and it's
Mhm.
what kids do. And the moment they see other kids, they want to start to play. And that's masks and social distancing make it tough. But I have enough stories from the classroom to know that they get right back into it. And that parents' worst fears is that their child's emotional well-being has been in some way so deeply affected that they won't be a normal kid. Again, teachers have the story to tell them about your daughter or your son was a normal kid in my classroom. I saw it.
I really appreciate the way you've disrupted the kind of negative narrative that we've all been hearing about returning to school and the trauma that is going to come into the classroom. And while I'm sure there are spots of it here and there, to understand that really the return is joyful for kids, I think is incredibly important, and I think it's affirming for teachers to know that they can welcome them back in the spirit of joy as opposed to in a sense of fear.
You know, I didn't learn this as a psychologist. I learned this from talking to teachers. I'm just relaying the experience of many. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of teachers who've greeted their children who've been remote learners, and it is just what you said, pretty joyful.
All right. Well, I think that is like exactly the message that we want to convey. So I'm gonna stop it for today, even though I could definitely keep talking to you for a long time. So thank you so much. And to teachers who are watching, like, thank you. Your job is hard, and we see you and we appreciate you for what you're doing. And if you are watching, like, I hope you will press the like button, subscribe, and tune in again. Thanks.